The October wind carried the scent of coming snow down from the peaks of the San Juan Mountains. At 8,000 feet, winter came early and stayed late, carving its lessons into stone and into men. Caleb Stone stood before his cabin in the thin morning light, splitting wood with the methodical precision of a man who had done this 10,000 times before. Each swing of the Hudson Bay axe, each clean crack of pine surrendering to steel, was its own small prayer. His breath rose in white clouds. The beard that covered the lower half of his weathered face was thick with frost, where his breath had frozen in the night. He was 43 years old. He looked 60. The mountains did that to a man. Behind him, the cabin stood solid against the wilderness. 20 feet by 24, built from ponderosa pine he had felled himself 6 years before. The roof was willow branches and clay, sloped steep to shed the heavy snows. The chimney was granite blocks, fitted so tight no mortar was needed, rising 12 feet into the cold sky. Smoke curled from it now, lazy and gray. From inside came the clatter of breakfast being made. Jesse, his nephew, moving about with the careful quietness of youth trying not to disturb. Caleb set another log on the chopping block, raised the axe, brought it down. The wood split clean. "Uncle Caleb," Jesse's voice came from behind him. Caleb didn't turn, didn't pause in his rhythm. The boy was learning to read the spaces between words, the weight of silence, learning that not every sound required acknowledgement. "There's a bull elk up on the North Ridge," Jesse continued. His voice carried that edge of excitement that 16-year-old boys couldn't quite contain. "Big one, maybe 600 pounds. Caleb split another log before responding. Then he straightened, set the axe head against the ground, leaned on the handle. Looked at Jesse properly for the first time that morning. The boy stood in the cabin doorway, thin but growing into his frame, brown hair that needed cutting, eyes the same green as Caleb's own. The only thing his brother Thomas had passed on before the influenza took him and his wife last winter. Jesse wore buckskin pants Caleb had taught him to make, a wool shirt that had belonged to Thomas, boots that were almost too small. "It's not hunting season, Jesse." "I know, but the meat would last us through January, maybe into February. We could smoke it, dry it, render the fat." Caleb studied his nephew. The boy wasn't wrong about the practical considerations. 600 pounds of elk meant survival, meant comfort, meant security in a land that offered none of those things freely. "There's laws, Jesse, hunting seasons, bag limits. They're not suggestions. But we're 50 miles from the nearest town. Nobody would know." "We'd know." Caleb picked up the axe again, turned back to the woodpile, but he spoke as he worked, his voice carrying that particular tone he used when he was teaching rather than just talking. "Your father taught me something when we were boys. He said a man isn't measured by what he does when people are watching. He's measured by what he does when nobody's watching but God and his own conscience." The axe came down, wood split. "The mountain gives us everything we need, Jesse, but we take only what we need when the season allows. That's the respect we owe." He could feel Jesse absorbing this, turning it over in his mind. The boy was smart. He understood the difference between surviving and thriving, between need and want, between law and honor. He was learning that sometimes they aligned, sometimes they didn't, and that a man had to navigate those waters his whole life. "Yes, sir," Jesse said finally. Caleb allowed himself the ghost of a smile, set down the axe. "Now get that coffee on. Day's wasting." Inside, the cabin was warm. A fire burned in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across walls adorned with the simple necessities of mountain life. Cooking pots hung from pegs. A rack held 3 rifles, the Sharps .45 caliber 70, a Winchester repeater, and an old Hawken that had belonged to Caleb's father. Traps hung by the door, steel jaws oiled and ready. Pelts were stretched on frames drying, and there above the door hung the dream catcher. It was willow and sinew woven in the traditional Ute pattern, with blue and white beads threaded through the web. Laughing Water had made it in the autumn of 1872, sitting by this same fire, her hands moving with the certainty of generations of knowledge flowing through her fingers. Caleb found himself looking at it now, as he did most mornings, as he had every morning for 4 years, Jesse noticed. The boy had learned to read silences, but he was still learning when to break them. "You miss her," Jesse said. Not a question. Caleb poured coffee from the pot, the tin cup warm in his calloused hands. He didn't answer immediately. Outside, a Clark's nutcracker called, harsh and lonely. "Every day," he said finally. "Every single day." He sat at the rough plank table, gestured for Jesse to sit across from him. The boy did, wrapping his hands around his own cup, waiting. "You want to know about her," Caleb said. "Only if you want to tell it." Caleb looked into the black surface of his coffee, saw for just a moment Laughing Water's reflection there, the way she had smiled, the way her eyes caught the light, the way she had looked at him like he was worth something, back when he wasn't sure he was. "Met her in the winter of '71, he began. His voice was low, rough with old grief. "I was checking trap lines up near Blue Mesa. Got caught in a blizzard, the kind that comes out of nowhere and tries to kill you. Couldn't see my hand in front of my face. Temperature dropped 40 degrees in an hour." He took a sip of coffee. The heat of it was nothing compared to the cold of that memory. "I was going to die. I knew it. You accept it after a while out here. The mountain takes what it takes," he paused. Then I heard singing. Jesse leaned forward slightly. "She was out gathering pine nuts when the storm hit. She knew a cave, not far from where I was stumbling around like a fool. She found me, took me there, built a fire with wood she'd been smart enough to keep dry. Saved my life." "And you married her?" "Not that simple. I stayed with her people through the winter, learned their ways, learned that everything I thought I knew about living in these mountains was maybe half of what there was to know. Learned respect, learned humility." He smiled barely. "Learned love. We married in the spring of '72 Ute ceremony. Lived with her band for 2 years. Good years. Best years of my life." The smile faded. "Then in the summer of '74, soldiers came from Fort Garland. Said the Utes needed to move to a reservation. Said it was for everyone's good. The colonel, he gave them gifts, blankets, food. Said it was a gesture of friendship." Jesse's face had gone still. He knew where this was going. 3 weeks later, half the band was sick. Smallpox. The blankets had been deliberately infected. Caleb's voice was flat now, empty of inflection, because that was the only way to tell it. "I was out hunting when it started. By the time I got back, Laughing Water was already showing symptoms." He could see it still, her beautiful face covered in pustules, her breath coming shallow and wet, the fever that made her delirious, crying out in Ute, calling for her mother who had died 5 years before. "I held her for 12 days, watched her die by inches. There was nothing I could do, nothing anyone could do. She died in my arms on the 13th day. The cabin was silent except for the crackle of the fire. The colonel who gave those blankets," Caleb continued. "His name was Philip Creed. I wanted to kill him. Wanted it so bad I could taste it. But Laughing Water, before she died, she made me promise. Made me swear I wouldn't let hate poison me the way disease had poisoned her people." He looked at Jesse directly now. "So I buried her up on the ridge, planted a limber pine over her grave, built this cabin, tried to live the kind of life she would have been proud of. And Jesse, I want you to understand something. You want to know what a man fears most? It's not death. Death comes for everyone. What a man fears is living after the person he loves has died. Waking up every morning and remembering they're gone. That's the real challenge. That's the real measure." Jesse's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Is that why you took me in? After my parents died?" Caleb reached across the table, gripped the boy's shoulder. "I took you in because you're family, because your father was my brother, and he would have done the same. But yes, also because Laughing Water's last words to me were that my path wasn't over, that someone else would need me. Maybe that someone was you." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Caleb stood, drained his coffee. "Come on, we've got work to do. Those deer hides won't tan themselves." The morning passed in the comfortable rhythm of necessary labor. Caleb showed Jesse how to work elk brain into deerskin, how to stretch and scrape and work the hide until it was supple as cloth. It was skilled work, requiring patience and attention. Jesse was getting better at it. "Why don't we just buy leather in town?" Jesse asked at one point. Caleb's hands never stopped moving as he answered. Could do that. Would be easier. But then we just have leather. This way we have knowledge. We have skill. We have connection to the animal that gave its life to provide. He looked at Jesse. Value isn't just in the thing itself, it's in understanding how the thing is made. People forget that. They want everything easy, everything quick. They lose something in that forgetting. Around noon, they walked up the ridge to Laughing Water's grave. The limber pine Caleb had planted 4 years ago was now 8 feet tall, its needles a soft blue-green. The granite headstone was simple, carved by Caleb's own hand. Laughing Water, beloved wife, 1842 to 1874. Caleb had brought a new eagle feather, found that morning. He placed it at the base of the stone, as was the Ute custom. Jesse stood quietly beside him. "Do you talk to her?" Jesse asked. "Every time I'm here." "What do you say?" Caleb was quiet for a moment, looking out over the valley spread below them. Heavens were gold and red against the dark green of the pines. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals only it could sense. "I tell her about my day, about you, about the mountain and how it's changing, about the elk herds and the weather patterns, and whether the pine nuts are coming in good this year." He paused. "I tell her I miss her, that I'm trying to live right, that I hope she's proud of the man I'm trying to buy it." Jesse nodded slowly. They stood there for a few minutes more, then headed back down to the cabin. The afternoon sun was warm on their backs. By evening, the temperature had dropped 20 degrees. Caleb and Jesse sat on the cabin's front porch, watching the sunset paint the western peaks orange and red and purple. Smoke rose from the chimney. Coffee sat warm in their hands. "Uncle Caleb," Jesse said, "can I ask you something?" "You just did." Jesse smiled despite himself. "Do you think you'll ever, will you ever marry again?" Caleb considered the question. Not the words, but what lay beneath them. The boy was asking about more than just marriage. He was asking about moving forward, about whether it was possible to love again after loss, about whether wounds ever truly healed. "I don't know," Caleb said honestly. "Some loves come once in a lifetime. Some men get a second chance. I haven't met anyone who made me think about it. Maybe I never will. Maybe that's fine." "Don't you get lonely?" "I've got you. I've got the mountain. I've got work that matters and a roof that doesn't leak too bad. A man can do worse." But even as he said it, even as he meant it, something in him acknowledged the hollow spaces, the cold side of the bed, the silence that used to be filled with Laughing Water's laughter, the ache that never quite went away. "Besides," he added, "loneliness isn't the worst thing. Being the kind of man you can't stand to be alone with, that's worse. If you can sit with yourself in silence and feel at peace, you're doing all right." They watched the light fade. Stars began to appear, hard and bright and infinite. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Another answered. "We should get inside," Caleb said. "Going to be cold tonight." That night, Caleb lay in his bunk, listening to Jesse's soft breathing from the loft above. The fire had burned down to coals. Shadows danced on the log walls. He thought, as he often did in the quiet hours before sleep, about the trajectory of a life, how it bends and turns in ways you never expect, how he had come to these mountains young and full of himself, thinking he knew what it meant to be a man, how Laughing Water had taught him otherwise, how loss had refined him, the way fire refines gold, burning away impurity until only the essential remains. He thought about Colonel Philip Creed, promoted to general now and stationed in Washington. The man had been rewarded for his service, while 43 Utes lay dead. Part of Caleb had wanted to hunt the man down, wanted revenge for Laughing Water and for all the others, but he had kept his promise, had let the hate go, or tried to anyway. Some wounds you carry forever. He was just drifting off when Smoke, his Appaloosa gelding, nickered nervously from the corral. Caleb was instantly awake, hand moving automatically to the Colt revolver on the bedpost. But after a moment, Smoke settled. Probably just a coyote passing through. Nothing to worry about. Caleb holstered the gun, lay back down. He didn't know that 60 miles south in a fort he had never visited, events were already in motion that would shatter his carefully maintained solitude. Didn't know that in 6 days he would find a broken woman by a creek and make a choice that would define the rest of his life. Didn't know that evil, like a family curse, passes from father to son. He closed his eyes and slept the light sleep of mountain men, always half listening for trouble. Tomorrow would be Sunday. He and Jesse would rest, maybe fish the creek, read from the Bible his mother had given him 40 years ago. It would be a good day, quiet and peaceful. The last such day he would know for a very long time. 60 miles south in Fort Garland, Najoni translated words she did not want to speak. The meeting room was warm, heated by a potbelly stove in the corner. 10 men sat around a long oak table, 5 Army officers in blue uniforms with brass buttons, 5 Apache representatives in traditional dress mixed with trade cloth. Najoni sat at the end, translating from Apache to English and back again, her voice steady and clear despite the discomfort of being the only woman in a room full of men who smelled of tobacco and leather and old sweat. She was 22 years old. She wore a deerskin dress her mother had made, tan and soft, decorated with turquoise beads and patterns that told the story of her clan. Her hair was long and black, braided simply. Her face was oval, her features fine, her eyes dark and intelligent. Major Bartholomew Creed sat at the head of the table. He was 44, tall and straight, with blonde hair and a carefully trimmed mustache. His uniform was immaculate. His eyes were blue and cold as high-altitude ice. Throughout the meeting, he watched Najoni with an attention that made her skin crawl. The negotiation was about supply routes through Apache territory. The Army wanted permission to move wagons from Fort Garland south to Fort Stanton in New Mexico territory. The Apache wanted assurances about hunting rights and water access. It was tedious, technical, the kind of thing that required someone who could navigate both languages and both cultures. Najoni had been doing this work for 3 years. She was good at it. The Army paid her $15 a month, which was more than most Apache could earn. She used the money to buy food and supplies for her mother's family at the Mescalero Reservation. The meeting ended at 9 in the evening. The Apache representatives filed out, shaking hands with the officers. Najoni began to gather her papers. Miss Najoni, she looked up. Major Creed stood over her. Yes, sir? I need you to stay for a moment. I want to review a few of the terms, make sure the translation was precise. Something in his voice made her hesitate, but he was the commanding officer. She worked for the Army. What choice did she have? Of course, sir. The other officers left. The door closed behind them. The room suddenly seemed smaller, the walls closer. Creed walked to the door, turned the key in the lock. The click was loud in the silence. Najoni felt her heartbeat accelerate. Sir, I don't recall asking what you think. His voice was pleasant, conversational. That made it worse. Sit down. She remained standing. Sir, it's late. I need to return to... He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed her wrist. His grip was iron. When I give you an order, Miss Najoni, I expect obedience. Do you understand? She tried to pull away. He held on. Sir, please, do you understand? She looked into his eyes and saw nothing there. No empathy, no humanity, just cold calculation. Yes, she whispered. Good. What happened next took 17 minutes. When it was over, Najoni lay on the floor, her dress torn from shoulder to waist, blood on her thighs, her lips split where he had hit her. She wasn't crying. She had gone somewhere else in her mind, somewhere far away, somewhere safe. Creed stood over her, adjusting his uniform. He examined his right hand where she had bitten him. The bite mark was deep, crescent-shaped, between thumb and forefinger. Blood welled from it. You'll pay for that, he said mildly. He walked to the door, unlocked it, opened it slightly. Corporal Ridge! Footsteps in the hallway. A young soldier appeared in the doorway. Corporal Samuel Ridge, 21 years old, Tennessee accent, face still marked by adolescent acne. He saw Najoni on the floor and his face went pale. Sir, the translator has had an accident, Corporal. She fell, hit her head. She's disoriented. I need you to take her to Bear Creek Canyon and ensure she returns safely to her people. Ridge stared at Creed. Something unspoken passed between them. Sir, shouldn't we take her to the doctor? She looks. Did I ask for your opinion, Corporal? No, sir. Take her to Bear Creek. Make sure she doesn't cause any trouble. If she tries to come back here, if she tries to make accusations, you know what to do." Ridge swallowed. "Sir?" Creed stepped close, spoke quietly so only Ridge could hear. But Najoni, still lying on the floor, heard every word. "Take her to the deep water. Tie rocks to her ankles. Make it look like Comanche raiders. Then report back that you were attacked, barely escaped. Understood?" Ridge's voice was barely audible. "Sir, I can't. You have a sister, don't you? Sarah. She works at the general store in town. Pretty girl. Be a shame if something happened to her, if she lost her job, if she couldn't find work anywhere, if she had to find other ways to make money." The threat hung in the air. "Do we understand each other, Corporal?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Get her out of here." The wagon ride to Bear Creek Canyon took 2 hours. Najoni lay in the back, semi-conscious, her body one long scream of pain. Ridge drove in silence, his hands shaking on the reins. He was thinking about his sister. Sarah was 18. She had come west a year ago to live with him, escaping their father's farm in Tennessee, where the crops had failed 3 years running, and the bank was threatening foreclosure. She had found work at the general store, was making a decent life. She sent money home to their parents. 8 months ago, Major Creed had invited Sarah to visit the fort, said he wanted to discuss a job opportunity. Ridge had been proud, his little sister, getting noticed by the commanding officer. He had found her 3 hours later in the stables, her dress torn, crying. She wouldn't tell him what happened. Just said, "Don't fight him, Sam, please. He'll destroy us. He'll destroy everyone." Now Ridge understood what had happened to his sister. Now he understood what kind of man gave orders in that fort. And now he was supposed to murder a woman to protect that man's secret. The wagon stopped at Bear Creek. The water here ran deep and fast, fed by snowmelt from the peaks. In the darkness, it looked black and infinite. Ridge got down, walked to the back of the wagon. Najoni was awake now, looking at him with eyes that held no hope, no expectation of mercy, just resignation. "Please," she whispered in English. "Please, quick." That word, that tone, broke something in him. Ridge stood there, a rope in one hand, looking at this broken woman who had done nothing wrong except refuse a monster. He thought about his sister, about orders and obedience, and the cost of moral cowardice, about the man he saw in the mirror every morning. He dropped the rope. "No," he said. He reached into the wagon, pulled Najoni up. She flinched, expecting violence. Instead, he wrapped his coat around her shoulders. "Listen to me," he said urgently. "There's a man, lives up north near Vallecito Creek, name's Caleb Stone. He's a mountain man, married to a Ute woman. Or was married. She died. But he's good people. He'll help you." From his pack, he pulled out a canteen of water, a bag of pemmican, a knife, and a leather sheath. "It's about 40 miles north. Follow the creek upstream, then cut east when you hit the big meadow. You'll find his cabin." Najoni stared at him. "Why?" "Because I couldn't help my sister. Because I'm tired of being afraid. Because it's the right thing to do." He untied her hands, helped her down from the wagon. Her legs barely held her weight. "What you tell him?" she asked. "Your major? I'll tell him Comanche raiders attacked us, that you were killed, that I barely escaped." He pulled out his knife, cut his own arm, let it bleed, tore his shirt. "I'll make it look real. He will kill you when he finds out. Maybe, but at least I'll die knowing I did one decent thing." He looked at her. "Can you walk?" She nodded, though he could see the lie in it. "Then go. Now, before I lose my nerve." Najoni took the supplies, started to walk away, then stopped, turned back. "Your sister, what her name?" "Sarah. I will pray for Sarah, and for you, Samuel Ridge. Just survive, that's prayer enough." She disappeared into the darkness. Ridge stood there for a long moment, looking at the place where she had vanished. Then he drove the wagon back toward Fort Garland, rehearsing his lies, preparing himself for whatever consequences would come. He was scared, but for the first time in 8 months, he felt clean. For 5 days, Najoni walked. The first 2 days were hell. Her body was broken, her feet bare and bleeding, every step agony. She ate the pemmican in tiny portions, rationed the water, slept in rocky overhangs when exhaustion overwhelmed her. On the third day, she encountered wolves, a pack of 6, lean and hungry. She climbed a ponderosa pine, sat in its branches for 7 hours while they circled below. When they finally left, she climbed down and kept walking. On the fourth day, fever set in. The wounds were infected. She stumbled through forests of aspen and pine, following the creek as Ridge had told her vision blurring, her thoughts fragmenting. She remembered her mother singing crow, teaching her the Apache way, teaching her that a warrior's daughter does not surrender. That pain is a test, not an end. That survival is its own form of victory. On the fifth day, at dawn, she reached a high meadow, could go no further. Collapsed by a creek, the sound of running water, the last thing she heard before darkness took her. 6 days after the meeting at Fort Garland, Caleb and Jesse rode out to check the trap lines. It was a bright morning, cold and clear. Smoke and cloud, their horses, picked their way carefully through the rocky terrain. They had been out for 2 hours, had checked 8 traps, found 3 beaver, and released a young otter that had gotten caught. Uncle Caleb. Caleb looked where Jesse was pointing. Smoke had stopped, ears forward, nostrils flaring. Something's wrong, Caleb said. He listened. The forest was too quiet. No birds singing, no squirrels chattering, just the sound of water and wind. Stay here, Caleb said. He drew his Colt revolver, urged Smoke forward. 50 yards ahead, he saw her. A woman lay by the creek, dressed in torn deerskin, feet bloody and bare, face swollen and bruised. Her black hair was matted with dirt and blood. She wasn't moving. Caleb dismounted quickly, approached carefully. You learned in the mountains that not everything that looked dead was dead. He knelt beside her, pressed 2 fingers to her throat. Pulse was there, weak and rapid. Fever fast. He looked at her more closely. The bruises on her throat were finger-shaped. The torn dress hadn't been torn by accident. The blood on her thighs told its own story. Something cold and hard formed in Caleb's chest. Jesse, he called, come here. The boy rode up, saw the woman, went pale. Is she alive? Barely. Caleb examined her more carefully. Broken ribs on the left side, probably 2. Deep bruising on her abdomen. Infected wounds on her feet. Dehydration. Fever. Probably pneumonia setting in. Get me a canteen. Jesse brought water. Caleb wet his bandana, pressed it to the woman's lips. After a moment, she stirred, made a small sound. Her eyes open, dark brown, fever bright. She saw Caleb, a white man with a scarred face and hard eyes, and survival instinct kicked in. Her hand moved, faster than Caleb expected, pulling a knife from somewhere in her torn dress. Stay back! The words came in Apache, then in broken English. I kill you! Caleb raised his hands, backed up slightly, spoke in Ute, the language closest to Apache he knew. I will not hurt you, I will help. She stared at him, the knife shaking in her grip. Then her eyes focused on something at his belt, the medicine bag. Laughing Water's medicine bag, decorated in the Ute style. Recognition, connection. Her hand loosened. The knife fell. She tried to speak, managed only 2 words before consciousness left her again. Please don't judge me. Caleb looked at Jesse. Get a blanket. We're taking her home. Uncle Caleb, she's Apache. If the army is looking for her, then let them look. Now get the blanket. Jesse did as he was told. Together, they wrapped the woman carefully, lifted her onto Cloud. Caleb mounted behind her, held her upright against his chest, felt how light she was, how breakable. As they rode back toward the cabin, Jesse said quietly, What do you think happened to her? Caleb didn't answer. He knew exactly what had happened, had seen it before. The world was full of men who thought they could take what they wanted from people they considered less than human. Uncle Caleb, you're about to learn something I can't teach with words alone, Jesse. You're about to learn what honor means, what it costs, and why it matters anyway. They rode in silence after that, the woman unconscious between them, the mountain watching all around. At the cabin, Caleb laid the woman on his own bed, the bed he had shared with Laughing Water. Jesse stoked the fire, heated water, fetched the medicine supplies. Caleb worked methodically, with the practiced hands of someone who had tended many wounds. He cleaned the cuts with water boiled with echinacea root, bandaged the feet, made a poultice of willow bark for the fever. wrap the broken ribs. How do you know what to do? Jesse asked. Laughing Water taught me. She was a healer for her people. Taught me about plants, about setting bones, about reading symptoms. He mixed dried leaves into hot water, made a bitter tea. This is Asha root. It fights infection, reduces fever. When she wakes, we'll get this into her. Will she live? Caleb looked at the woman. Her breathing was shallow but steady. Pulse was still weak, but not getting weaker. I don't know. She's lost a lot of blood. The infection is bad. The next 48 hours will tell. He stood, moved to the window, looked out at the mountains. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and red. Jesse, if the army comes looking for her, we're going to have trouble. I know. You can leave. Go to Denver. Stay with your aunt. This isn't your fight. Jesse's jaw set stubbornly. I'm not leaving. Caleb turned, looked at his nephew. Saw in that moment not a boy but a young man making a choice about what kind of person he wanted to be. All right then, we're in this together. That night, Caleb sat beside the woman's bed, changing the bandages, getting water into her when she was briefly conscious, monitoring her fever. Jesse slept in the loft above, but lightly, ready to help if needed. Around midnight, the woman spoke in her delirium. Apache words Caleb didn't understand, then English. Fragments, please. No, mother. Broken. Caleb didn't speak, just kept the wet cloth on her forehead, kept the fire burning, kept watch. Morning came gray and cold. The woman's fever broke around dawn. She opened her eyes, looked around the cabin with something approaching awareness. Saw Caleb sitting in the chair beside the bed. Where? Her voice was rough, barely audible. My cabin, in the San Juan Mountains. You're safe. She tried to sit up, gasped at the pain. Don't move. You have broken ribs. She lay back, studied him. You are the one, Caleb Stone. How do you know my name? The soldier. Ridge, he told me before he let me go. Caleb absorbed this. A soldier let you go? He was ordered to kill me. He did not. She closed her eyes. I do not know why. Sometimes people surprise you. She looked at him again. Why you help me? You don't know me. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he stood, walked to the mantel, picked up a small photograph in a wooden frame, brought it back to the bed. This was my wife, Laughing Water. She was Yuti. She died 4 years ago from the same poison that nearly killed you. Najoni looked at the photograph, a beautiful woman with kind eyes. Soldiers? She asked quietly. Infected blankets. Killed 43 of her people. He paused. The officer who ordered it was Colonel Philip Creed. The woman went very still. The man who did this to you, Caleb said. What was his name? She hesitated, then Major Bartholomew Creed. The name hung in the air between them. His son, Caleb said quietly. Evil runs in families, the woman whispered. So it seems. They looked at each other, two people connected by tragedy, by the cruelty of men who shared a name and a nature. What is your name? Caleb asked. Najoni, it means beautiful in my language. You are welcome here, Najoni, as long as you need. Why I bring trouble? If they find me here, then they find you, but they'll have to go through me first. A single tear ran down Najoni's cheek, the first she had shed since that night in Fort Garland. I could not save my wife, Caleb said. But maybe I can help you. Najoni closed her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was so soft he almost didn't hear it. Laughing Water was wise to love you. Caleb didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Just pulled the blanket up around her shoulders, checked her bandages one more time, then left her to rest. Outside, he found Jesse sitting on the porch, watching the sunrise. She going to make it? Jesse asked. I think so. She's strong. What happens now? Caleb sat beside his nephew, looked out at the mountains that had been his home for 30 years. The mountains that had given him everything and taken everything. The mountains that were indifferent to human drama but somehow always bore witness. Now we wait, we heal, and we get ready. For what? For the storm that's coming. Because men like Creed don't let loose ends stay loose. The sun cleared the eastern peaks, flooded the valley with light. Somewhere in the distance, an eagle called. Life continuing, cycles turning, the world moving forward, whether people were ready or not. Caleb stood, put his hand on Jesse's shoulder. Come on, let's make breakfast. It's going to be a long day. The days that followed fell into a rhythm as old as healing itself. Caleb tended Najoni's wounds with the quiet competence of a man who had learned medicine from necessity and love. Jesse helped where he could, learning alongside his uncle, watching the careful way Caleb changed bandages, monitored fever, adjusted treatment as symptoms shifted. By the third day, Najoni could sit up. By the fifth, she could stand, though her broken ribs made every breath a conscious choice between pain and air. By the seventh day, she was walking slowly around the cabin, one hand pressed against her side, testing the limits of her healing body. She spoke little during those first days. When she did speak, it was practical. Water, please. I need to use the privy. Thank you. Her eyes held a distance, a place she had gone to survive and had not yet found her way back from. Caleb understood. He had seen it before in men who came back from war. Had seen it in Laughing Water's eyes in the days before the fever took her fully, when she understood what was coming and had to make peace with it. Trauma lived in the body long after the mind tried to move forward. On the eighth day, Jesse was outside splitting kindling when he heard voices from inside the cabin. He paused, listened. If I still remember how to weave, Najoni was saying, her voice tight with emotion. Does that mean I am still Apache? If he took everything else, if he broke everything else, but I still remember the songs my mother taught me, the patterns she showed me, does that mean anything is left of who I was? Jesse couldn't hear Caleb's response. His uncle's voice was too low. But whatever he said, it must have been the right thing, because after a moment, Jesse heard Najoni crying. Not the silent tears she sometimes shed at night when she thought no one was watching, but real crying, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and has to come out, or it poisons everything. Jesse went back to splitting kindling, giving them privacy, understanding that some healing happened in words and some happened in the space between them. That evening, Najoni sat by the fire for the first time, wrapped in one of Laughing Water's old shawls. Caleb had offered it hesitantly, unsure if it was appropriate, but Najoni had taken it with something like reverence. She had good taste, Najoni said, running her fingers over the intricate Ute beadwork. This pattern, it tells a story. The story of the first snow, Caleb said. She made it the winter we married. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Jesse was up in the loft pretending to read but actually listening. Learning, always learning how men and women navigated the complicated territory of shared pain. Caleb, Najoni said finally. The soldier, Ridge. He told me his sister, Sarah, the major, Creed, he did something to her too. Caleb's jaw tightened. Did Ridge say what happened? No, only that he could not protect her, that he is ashamed. She looked into the fire. I think this is why he saved me, to save someone because he could not save her. Good intentions don't always lead to good outcomes, Caleb said, but sometimes they're all a man has. You think he will come here, Ridge? If Creed finds out you're alive, if he sends someone, it'll be Ridge and whoever else he can order to do his dirty work. Question is whether Ridge will follow those orders a second time. You think he might have changed? Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, people can surprise you. Sometimes they're worse than you thought. Sometimes they're better. We'll find out which when the time comes. The time came 4 days later, on a cold November morning when frost turned everything white and brittle. Caleb was teaching Najoni to shoot. She was stronger now, moving more easily, though she still favored her left side. The Sharps rifle was heavy in her hands, and the first time she fired it, the recoil knocked her back 2 steps. Plant your feet, Caleb said. Shoulder into it. The gun's going to kick. Let it. Don't fight it. She tried again. This time she stayed upright, though her face showed the pain of the impact against her healing ribs. Better, Caleb said. Again. They were 50 yards from the cabin, using a dead tree as a target, when smoke whinnied nervously from the corral. Caleb's hand went to his Colt automatically. Inside. Now. I can fight, sir. Not against 4 men with rifles, you can't. Inside. Bar the door. If I tell you to run, you run. Understand? Their eyes met. After a moment, Najoni nodded. She went to the cabin. Caleb turned to face the approaching riders. 4 men on horseback emerged from the tree line. Blue uniforms. Army. The lead rider was young, maybe 21, with a corporal's stripes. Ridge. Behind him rode 3 privates. One was broad-shouldered and mean-looking, with a scar across his nose. One was thin and nervous, couldn't have been more than 19. The third was middle-aged with tired eyes that had seen too much. They stopped 20 feet from Caleb. Ridge dismounted slowly, hands visible, away from his weapon. "Mr. Stone, Corporal, I don't want trouble." "Then turn around and ride out." The mean-looking private spat tobacco juice. "Old man, you're harboring Army property. Hand over the squaw, and we'll let you keep breathing." Caleb's eyes never left Ridge, but his voice when he spoke was colder than the frost around them. "Next man who speaks without being spoken to is going to learn a permanent lesson about manners." The private's hand moved toward his rifle. "Moss, don't," Ridge said sharply. "He's just one old man, Corporal. He's a mountain man with a Sharps rifle at 30 yards. You'll be dead before you clear the saddle." Moss subsided, but his eyes promised violence later. Ridge took a step forward. "Mr. Stone, I was ordered to bring her back. Creed thinks she's alive. He's sending search parties out across the territory. If I don't bring her in, someone else will come. Someone who won't hesitate to burn this place down with all of you inside." "You let her go once," Caleb said. "That was the hard choice. This should be the easy one. It's not about what I want. It's about my sister. Creed has made it clear that if I don't follow orders, Sarah will pay the price." The cabin door opened. Najoni stepped out, the Sharps rifle in her hands, pointed at the ground but ready. Jessie followed, carrying the Winchester. "Samuel Ridge," Najoni said. Her voice was steady. "You saved me once. What you choose now?" Ridge stood frozen, caught between duty and conscience, between fear for his sister and knowledge of what was right. The thin private spoke up, his voice shaking. "Corporal Ridge, sir, I got a sister too, back home in Ohio. If someone did to her what the major did to this woman, I'd want someone to help her." The older private shifted in his saddle. "I got daughters," he said quietly. 3 of them. I joined the Army to fight Indians, not murder women." "This ain't right, Ridge. You know it ain't." Moss laughed harshly. "You boys gone soft? She's just an Indian. Nobody cares what happens to her." "I care," Jessie said, stepping forward. At 16, he was nearly as tall as his uncle, though not as broad, but his eyes were steady and his hands didn't shake. "I care, and I'll fight any man here who says different." Moss sneered. "Boy, I'd break you in half." "You could try," Caleb said mildly, "but you'd have to get past me first." And Ridge here would have to decide if he wants to explain to Major Creed why he came back with 2 dead soldiers and 1 terrified kid. Ridge stood very still. In his face, Caleb could see the war being waged. Fear against honor. Self-preservation against moral clarity. The weight of threats against the burden of conscience. Then Ridge did something that changed everything. He took off his Army hat, dropped it on the ground, unbuckled his gun belt, laid it beside the hat. "No," he said. Moss blinked. "What?" "I said no, I'm not doing this. Not again. I couldn't save my sister, but I can save her." He pointed at Najoni. "I'm done being afraid. I'm done following orders from a man who uses his rank to hurt people who can't fight back." "You're committing treason, Ridge." "No, I'm committing to being the kind of man who can sleep at night." The thin private dismounted, started unbuckling his own gun belt. "I'm with you, Corporal." The older private took longer, but eventually he too dismounted. "My name's Webb, Hiram Webb, and I reckon I followed enough bad orders in my life. Time I followed a good man instead." That left Moss alone, still mounted, hand on his rifle. "You're all fools," he said. "Creed will have you shot for desertion." "Maybe," Ridge said, "but we'll die knowing we did right. Can you say the same?" For a moment, it looked like Moss might try to shoot them all. His hand tightened on his rifle. His eyes went wild. Then Webb moved his hand to his sidearm. "Private Moss," he said quietly, "I've been a soldier for 20 years. I've seen men make the choice you're about to make. I've seen where it leads. Don't be stupid." Moss looked around at the 4 men facing him, at the mountain man with the cold eyes, at the Apache woman with the rifle, at the boy who looked ready to din for principal. He spat again. You're all dead. You know that, right? Creed'll hunt you down, all of you. Then we better make sure we get to someone who can stop him first, Caleb said. And you better decide if you're going to help us or if you're going to be a problem. I ain't helping no Indian. Then ride back to Fort Garland. Tell Creed whatever you want. But if you come back here, if I see you on this mountain again, I won't give you a second chance. Moss looked at each of them in turn. Then he wheeled his horse around and rode off, spurring hard, disappearing into the trees. The silence after he left was profound. Ridge looked at Caleb. He'll go straight to Creed. We've got maybe 2 days before a full company comes looking. Then we better use those 2 days. Caleb turned to the others. My cabin's not big enough for all of us, but there's a line shack 3 miles east that'll keep you dry. We need to talk, need to plan. But first, let's get you boys some hot food and figure out what we're actually trying to accomplish here. They sat around Caleb's table, 6 people who had been strangers that morning, now bound together by choice and circumstance. Caleb poured coffee, Najoni cut bread, Jesse ladled out stew from the pot that had been simmering all morning. Ridge spoke first. We can't just hide. Creed has resources. He'll find us eventually. We're not hiding, Caleb said. We're going to Denver, to the territorial court, going to tell a judge what happened. Get it on record, make it official. You think a white judge is going to believe an Apache woman over an Army major? Webb asked. Maybe not, but I know a judge who might, Samuel Holland. He's a circuit judge, rides the territory. I knew him during the war. He's fair. More than that, he lost his son at Gettysburg. Made him understand that rank doesn't equal righteousness. It's 120 miles to Denver, Ridge said, through country where Creed has contacts at every fort and trading post. We'd never make it. Not if we go alone, Caleb agreed. But if we gather evidence, if we bring other witnesses, if we make enough noise that people start paying attention, then maybe we have a chance. Najoni had been quiet, listening. Now she spoke. There are others, other women. Everyone turned to look at her. I heard talk, she continued, at the reservation. A Mexican woman in Salida, her daughter disappeared 2 years ago near Fort Garland. They said she ran away, but the mother never believed it. A Kiowa woman in 75, same thing. And your sister, Samuel Ridge. How many others? Ridge's face had gone pale. You're saying Creed's been doing this for years? I am saying power protects itself, and men with power hurt people who have none. This is not new. This is as old as men. Then we find them, Caleb said. We find every family, every victim, every witness. We bring them all to Denver. We make it impossible to ignore. Webb shook his head slowly. That's a hell of a plan. Risky as all get out. We'd be wanted men before we even got started. We're wanted men now, Ridge pointed out. Might as well be wanted for something that matters. The young private, who had said his name was Coleman, spoke up. My sister back in Ohio, she's 14. If something happened to her, if some man with rank and uniform hurt her and nobody did nothing, I'd hope someone somewhere would stand up, even if it cost them. They all looked at each other, these unlikely allies. A mountain man carrying old grief, an Apache woman carrying new trauma, a nephew learning what honor costs, 3 soldiers choosing conscience over career. All right, Caleb said. First thing, we need supplies. Food for a week, ammunition, warm clothes. Najoni, can you ride? Yes. Good. We leave tomorrow at dawn. First stop is Salida. We find that Mexican woman, get her story. Then we head to Colorado Springs. There's a reverend there who might know about other cases. Then Denver. And if Creed catches us before we get there, Webb asked, then we fight. But we fight smart. We use the terrain. We move at night when we can. We split up if we have to. Caleb looked at each of them. I won't lie to you. Some of us might not make it. This is dangerous. If any of you want to walk away now, I understand. No one moved. All right then. Jesse, help me gather supplies. Ridge, you and your men get settled at the line shack. We'll finalize plans tonight. Move out at first light. As they dispersed to their tasks, Najoni caught Caleb's arm. You risk much for me. I risk what's right, Caleb said. That's different. Is it? He thought about laughing water, about the promise he'd made to her, about the kind of man he wanted to be, had tried to be, in the 4 years since her death. Yes, he said finally, it is. That night, as the others slept, Caleb walked up to Laughing Water's grave. The moon was nearly full, painting everything in silver and shadow. The limber pine he'd planted was frosted white, beautiful and stark against the dark sky. He knelt by the stone, placed a hand on the cold granite. I know I promised I wouldn't let hate consume me, he said quietly, and I've kept that promise. But this isn't about hate. It's about stopping a man who's hurting people, about standing up when standing up matters. You'd understand that. You'd approve, I think. The wind moved through the pine branches, making them whisper. I met a woman, Apache. Her name's Najoni. Someone hurt her the way someone hurt your people. And I'm going to help her, even if it costs everything. Even if it costs me. Because you were right, my path wasn't over. She needed me. They all need me. He was quiet for a moment, listening to the mountain sounds, the distant howl of wolves, the closer scurry of a fox hunting in the underbrush. I wish you were here, he said. I wish I could ask you what to do, but I think I know what you'd say. You'd say the same thing you always said. Do what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. He stood, touched the tree trunk once more. I love you, he said. I'll always love you. But I think maybe it's time I started living again. Not forgetting, never forgetting, but living. He walked back down to the cabin. Tomorrow would bring danger, would bring choices, would bring consequences he couldn't yet predict. But tonight, for the first time in 4 years, Caleb Stone felt like he had a purpose beyond simple survival. It was enough. They left before dawn, 7 riders on 6 horses. Najoni rode double with Caleb on Smoke, her arms around his waist, her head resting against his back. Jesse rode Cloud. Ridge, Webb, and Coleman had their army mounts. The journey to Salida took 2 days. They traveled carefully, avoiding main trails, camping cold at night to avoid smoke being spotted. On the evening of the 2nd day, they saw a patrol in the distance. 6 riders wearing Fort Garland blue. They waited in a ravine for 3 hours until the patrol passed. They're looking for us, Ridge said. Then we better move faster, Caleb replied. Salida was a mining town, rough and practical, built on silver and hope. They arrived late afternoon, tied their horses at the edge of town. Caleb and Najoni went in alone while the others waited. They found Elena Martinez living in a small adobe house on the poor side of town. She answered the door with flour on her hands, suspicion in her eyes. A woman living alone learned to be cautious. Mrs. Martinez? Caleb said. My name is Caleb Stone. This is Najoni. We're trying to find out what happened to your daughter, Rosa. Elena's face went white. You from the army? No, ma'am, from the army's victims. Something in Caleb's tone, or maybe in Najoni's eyes, made Elena step back, open the door wider. Come in. The house was neat despite its poverty. A shrine to Rosa dominated one wall. Photographs, a rosary, candles, flowers. Rosa had been 18 when she died, beautiful and young, her whole life ahead of her. Elena told her story in Spanish, which Najoni translated. In 1876, Rosa had gone to Fort Garland to sell vegetables from their garden. She never came home. 3 days later, her body was found in the Arkansas River. The army said she jumped, said it was suicide, case closed. But Rosa was afraid of water, Elena said, tears running down her weathered face. Since she was a child, she would not go near deep water. And her dress, when they found her, it was torn. There were marks on her wrists like rope. But the sheriff, he said it was from the current. She went to a chest, pulled out a bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside was Rosa's dress, torn from shoulder to waist, dark stains that could only be blood. I kept it, Elena whispered. The sheriff wanted to burn it, said I should not torture myself. But I knew she did not jump. Someone threw her in that river, someone who did not want her to talk. Caleb examined the dress carefully. The tears were deliberate, violent. The blood pattern was wrong for a fall, and the marks on the fabric near the sleeves, they were consistent with rope burns. Mrs. Martinez, he said gently, I believe you, and I'm going to help prove it, but I need you to come with us to Denver. To tell a judge what you told me. Elena looked at Rosa's picture. If I do this, if I speak against the army, what happens to me? I don't know, Caleb said honestly. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. But your daughter deserves justice. And there are other daughters, other mothers. We can stop this, but only if we all speak together. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she kissed her fingers, touched Rosa's photograph, crossed herself. I will go, she said, for Rosa, for all the daughters. They left Salida that night, now 8 strong, pushed north toward Colorado Springs, made it there in 3 days, moving cautiously, always watching their back trail. Colorado Springs was bigger, more civilized. They found Reverend Josiah Blackwood at St. Mary's Church, an old stone building that had stood since the early days of settlement. Blackwood was 64, white-haired, with the weathered face of a man who had lived hard and prayed harder. He listened to their story in his study, his hands folded on his desk, his eyes grave. I know what you're talking about, he said when they finished. 3 years ago, a Kiowa woman came to this church. Her name was Singing Bird. She was hurt, bleeding, terrified. She said a soldier had attacked her at Fort Garland. She begged for sanctuary. He stopped, his voice breaking. I gave her a room, let her stay. But that night, soldiers came. They said she was a runaway, that she was Army property, that I was breaking the law by harboring her. And God forgive me, I let them take her. I was afraid of the Army, afraid of losing the church, afraid of what might happen if I stood against authority. He looked up at them, his eyes wet. 2 weeks later, I heard she disappeared. They said she ran away to Kansas, but I found this, buried in the church garden. He opened a drawer, pulled out a leather belt decorated with intricate beadwork. A name was burned into the leather. Singing Bird. She never would have left this behind. Her mother made it. It was precious to her. I've carried the guilt of my cowardice for 3 years. If you're going to Denver, if you're going to speak truth, then I'm coming with you. I owe her that much. Ridge spoke up. Reverend, we're fugitives. Riding with us means you'll be too. I'm 64 years old, Corporal. I've lived long enough to know that some things matter more than safety. This is one of them. They were 9 now, 9 people carrying stories of pain, riding toward a reckoning. On the 5th day out from Caleb's commitment, they made camp in a box canyon 20 miles south of Denver. They'd been lucky so far, avoiding patrols, moving fast, staying ahead of pursuit. But luck only lasted so long. That night, sitting around a small fire, Jesse asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. Uncle Caleb, what if we get to Denver and the judge doesn't believe us? What if we've risked everything for nothing? Caleb was quiet for a moment, staring into the flames. Then he said, Jesse, you remember what I taught you about the elk? About taking only what you need, respecting the season, following the law even when no one's watching? Yes, sir. This is the same principle. We do what's right not because we're guaranteed success, but because it's right. The outcome isn't what defines us. The choice is what defines us. We chose to stand up. We chose to speak. We chose to fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Win or lose, that choice matters. Coleman, the young private, spoke up. My grandmother used to say that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway. Your grandmother was a wise woman, Caleb said. They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Then Najoni began to sing softly in Apache. It was a warrior song her father had taught her when she was small. A song about standing when it would be easier to fall, about fighting when it would be easier to surrender, about choosing honor over survival. One by one, the others joined in, humming the melody even though they didn't know the words. Their voices rose into the night sky, carrying hope and defiance in equal measure. They didn't know that 3 miles away, Captain Jacob Reeves sat on his horse, listening. Reeves was Creed's second in command, a man who followed orders without question, a man who believed that might made right and that the Army's word was law. He had 20 soldiers with him. He'd been tracking the fugitives for 5 days, and now, finally, he had them. Sir, said his sergeant quietly, we could take them now while they're camped. Reeves shook his head. No, too many civilians, including that reverend. If we slaughter them here, there'll be questions. Better to wait. They're heading to Denver. We'll intercept them on the road tomorrow. Make it look like they resisted. Tragic accident. Case closed. And if they surrender peacefully? Reeves smiled coldly. They won't. I'll make sure of it. Morning came cold and gray. Caleb woke with a feeling he couldn't name, a sense of wrongness that made his hand go automatically to his pistol. Uncle Caleb? Jesse was already up, standing by the canyon entrance. We got a problem. Caleb joined him, looked where he was pointing. On the ridge above them, silhouetted against the pale sky, were riders, 20 of them, wearing blue. How long they been there? Caleb asked. Don't know, I just spotted them. Ridge appeared beside them, his face grim. That's Captain Reeves, Creed's enforcer. If he's here, he didn't come to talk. They woke the others quickly, gathered by the fire. The situation was clear. They were trapped in a box canyon with one way out and 20 soldiers blocking it. We could fight, Webb said. 9 against 20? Ridge shook his head. We'd lose. We could surrender, Coleman suggested. Tell them we're coming in peacefully. They won't care, Ridge said. Reeves has his orders. We don't make it to Denver alive. Everyone looked at Caleb. Somehow, without discussion, he had become their leader. He thought about options, about terrain, about the desperate arithmetic of survival. Then he thought about something Laughing Water had once told him. When the path forward is blocked, look for the path you cannot see. There's a way, he said slowly, but it's dangerous, and not all of us might make it. Tell us, Najoni said. Caleb pointed up the canyon wall. There's a trail up there, maybe 2 feet wide, running along the cliff face. I used it once, years ago, chasing a bighorn sheep. It's treacherous. One wrong step and you fall 200 feet. But it comes out on the other side of the ridge, about 3 miles north. If we can get up there before Reeves realizes what we're doing, we might have a chance. Might? Webb echoed. That's the best I've got. They looked at each other, these 9 souls bound by choice and desperation. Then one by one they nodded. All right, Caleb said. Webb, you and Ridge take the lead. You're experienced soldiers. You know how to move. Coleman, you're in the middle with Elena and Reverend Blackwood. Jesse, you're behind them. Najoni, you're with me at the rear. We move quiet, we move fast, and if anyone falls, we keep moving. Understood? Yes, sir. They gathered their few possessions, left the horses in the canyon with feed and water. The trail ahead was too narrow to ride, but once they reached the ridgetop, they could circle back and retrieve the horses before continuing to Denver. Caleb ran his hand down Smoke's neck. We'll be back for you, boy. Stay quiet. Then they started climbing. The trail was everything Caleb had promised. Narrow, crumbling, with a sheer drop on one side and smooth rock on the other. They moved slowly, carefully. Each step a negotiation between progress and survival. Halfway up, Elena slipped. Reverend Blackwood caught her, held her steady until she found her footing again. They kept going. Behind them, they could hear shouting. Reeves had realized what they were doing. Soldiers were dismounting, starting to climb. Move faster, Caleb called quietly. They're coming. The trail narrowed even more. There was a section, maybe 10 feet long, where they had to shuffle sideways, backs pressed against the rock, toes hanging over empty air. Coleman, the youngest, was breathing hard, on the edge of panic. Look at the rock, Jesse told him. Don't look down. Just look at the rock right in front of you and take it one step at a time. Coleman nodded, swallowed his fear, kept moving. They reached the top just as the first soldier reached the narrow section. Ridge looked back, saw the man shuffling along, and made a decision. He picked up a rock, threw it, not at the soldier but at the trail itself. The rock hit, dislodged other rocks, started a small slide. The soldier scrambled back, cursing. That won't stop them long, Ridge said, but it'll slow them down. They ran along the ridge top, moving as fast as the terrain allowed. Behind them, they could hear Reeves shouting orders, organizing his men. Some were continuing up the trail. Others were riding around, trying to cut them off. There, Webb pointed, a mining road barely more than a track leading north toward Denver. They stumbled down to it, exhausted but alive. All 9 of them. Against odds, they had made it. Webb, Coleman, come with me, Caleb said. We circle back, get the horses. The rest of you, wait here. Stay hidden. An hour later, they returned with all 6 horses, weary but ready. Now we ride, Caleb said. Denver's 20 miles. We can make it by nightfall. They'll chase us, Coleman said. Let them chase. Every mile closer to Denver, every minute we stay ahead increases our chances. Come on. They ran. They reached Denver as the sun was setting, 9 filthy, exhausted people stumbling into civilization like refugees from a war. People stared. Children pointed, but no one tried to stop them. The courthouse, Caleb gasped. Where's the courthouse? A merchant pointed. 3 blocks east. But it's closed. Judges don't work after dark. This one will, Caleb said. They made their way through the streets. Behind them, somewhere in the dusk, came the sound of hoofbeats. Reeves and his men catching up. The courthouse was an imposing stone building, 3 stories tall, with marble steps and brass fixtures. A clerk was locking the front door as they arrived. We need to see Judge Holland, Caleb said. It's urgent. Court's closed. Come back tomorrow. Caleb grabbed the door, held it open. A woman has been raped by an army officer. Other women have been murdered. We have evidence. We have witnesses. And there's an army captain 3 minutes behind us who would very much like us all to disappear. So you can either get Judge Holland right now, or you can explain to him tomorrow why you turned away justice when it came knocking. The clerk stared at them, at their desperate faces, at the determination in their eyes. Then he nodded. Wait here. 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. They stood on those marble steps, watching the street. Any moment they expected Reeves to appear. Then the door opened. A man stood there, tall and gray-haired, wearing a simple suit. His face was lined with age and wisdom, his eyes sharp and measuring. I'm Judge Samuel Holland, he said. Someone want to tell me what the hell is going on? Caleb stepped forward. Your Honor, my name is Caleb Stone, and we have a story you need to hear. Behind them, rounding the corner, came Captain Reeves and his soldiers. Those people are fugitives, Reeves shouted, under arrest for desertion, kidnapping, and murder. Judge Holland looked at Reeves, looked at the 9 ragged people on his courthouse steps, looked at the fear and desperation in their faces. Captain, he said, I suggest you and your men lower your weapons and step back. These people have requested the protection of this court, and I am granting it. If you have charges to bring, you can bring them tomorrow with proper paperwork through proper channels, but right now tonight, they are under my jurisdiction, not yours. Your Honor, with respect, this is a military matter. With respect, Captain, I am a federal judge, and my authority supersedes yours when it comes to civilian law. Now stand down or I'll have you arrested for contempt. The standoff lasted 10 heartbeats. Then Reeves, his face twisted with rage, gestured to his men. Fall back. We'll settle this tomorrow. They withdrew, but not far. They could still be seen in the street, watching. Holland turned to the 9 on the steps. All of you inside, now, we have a lot to talk about. They filed into the courthouse, into the safety of stone walls and the promise of law. As Caleb passed through the door, he looked back once at the mountain, invisible now in the darkness, but always there, always waiting. They had made it, against odds, against pursuit, against everything that had tried to stop them. They had made it. Now came the hard part. Now came the truth. Judge Samuel Holland's chambers were lined with law books, floor to ceiling, the accumulated wisdom of centuries staring down at the 9 exhausted people who collapsed into chairs around his conference table. A clerk brought coffee, strong and black. Reverend Blackwood said a quiet prayer of thanks before drinking his. Holland sat at the head of the table, a notepad before him, his reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked at each of them in turn, assessing, measuring. Then he spoke. Before we begin, I need to understand what I'm dealing with. Captain Reeves claims you're fugitives, that you kidnapped an army translator, that you're deserters, that you assaulted soldiers. He's demanding I turn you over immediately. And will you? Ridge asked quietly. That depends on what you tell me, and whether it's the truth. Holland's eyes were hard but not unkind. I've been a judge for 22 years. I fought for the Union in the war, lost my son at Gettysburg. I know that power corrupts. I know that rank doesn't equal righteousness. But I also know that the law requires evidence, not just emotion. So convince me. Start from the beginning. Leave nothing out. Caleb looked at Najoni. She nodded, took a breath, and began to speak. She told it all. The meeting at Fort Garland, Major Creed keeping her late, the locked door, what happened in that room, the order to Ridge to kill her, Ridge's mercy, her 5-day journey through the wilderness, Caleb finding her, healing her. Her voice never wavered, though her hands shook as she held her coffee cup. When she finished, the room was silent except for the ticking of a clock on the mantel. Holland wrote notes, his face unreadable. Then he looked at Ridge. Corporal Ridge, you were ordered to murder this woman? Yes, sir. And you disobeyed that order? Yes, sir. Wish I may. Ridge was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because 8 months ago, Major Creed did the same thing to my sister. Because I couldn't protect her then. And I've lived with that shame every day since because I couldn't do it twice. Your sister will testify? She's on her way to Denver now, sir. I sent her a telegram from Colorado Springs. Holland made another note, turned to Elena Martinez. Mrs. Martinez, tell me about your daughter. Well, Elena spoke in Spanish, Nijoni translating. The story of Rosa, the torn dress, the marks on her wrists, the impossible suicide of a girl who feared deep water. Elena pulled the dress from her bundle, laid it on the table. The torn fabric seemed to scream its own testimony. Holland examined it carefully, his jaw tight. Then Reverend Blackwood told his story, the Kiowa woman, singing bird, his cowardice, the belt he'd found, proof she hadn't run away as the army claimed. When they were done, Holland sat back, removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes. He looked suddenly older, wearier. This is one of the most damning accounts I've heard in my career, he said finally. If true, and I'm inclined to believe it is, Major Bartholomew Creed has committed crimes that would see him hanged. But there's a problem. What problem? Caleb asked. He's the son of a general. He has the backing of the military establishment. He has resources, connections, political influence. You have the word of an Apache woman, a Mexican widow, a reverend with a guilty conscience, and 3 deserting soldiers. A defense attorney would tear you apart. So you're saying there's no hope? Jesse's voice was thick with disappointment. I'm saying hope isn't enough. We need something more, something concrete, irrefutable. Holland leaned forward. Tomorrow morning, Creed will arrive in Denver. He has to, now that you're here. He'll bring lawyers, character witnesses, military records showing his exemplary service. He'll paint you as liars, as troublemakers, as people with grudges against the army. We need something he can't deny, something that proves beyond any doubt that he's guilty. The bite mark, Nijoni said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. When he attacked me, I bit his hand, between the thumb and first finger. The mark will still be there. It is shaped like my teeth. Holland's eyes lit up. Can you prove the mark matches your bite? I can show you, here, on this wax. She pulled a candle from the table, softened it with her hands, bit into it, left a perfect impression of her teeth. That's good, Holland said. Very good. Tomorrow in open court, I'll order Creed to show his hands. If the bite mark matches, it's physical evidence that ties him directly to you. Combined with your testimonies, it might be enough. And if he refuses, Webb asked, then his refusal becomes evidence itself. A man with nothing to hide doesn't refuse a lawful order from a judge. Caleb leaned forward. Judge, we didn't come all this way just to tell our story to you. We came to tell it to everyone. The whole territory needs to know what Creed's been doing. You want a public trial? I want sunlight. Evil dies in sunlight. Holland smiled grimly. Then tomorrow we'll open the curtains. Get some rest, all of you. I'm putting you under protective custody. You'll stay in the courthouse jail tonight. Not as prisoners, as guests. It's the safest place in Denver. As they stood to leave, Holland caught Caleb's arm. Stone, I knew your father. He was at Gettysburg too. Saved my life when a Confederate sharpshooter had me pinned. I always wondered what happened to his to his boys. Thomas died last year. I'm all that's left. He'd be proud of you. What you're doing here, standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves, that's what he taught me about honor. I'm just trying to do right. That's all any of us can do. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be hard. They slept in cells with the doors open, blankets provided. A guard posted outside not to keep them in, but to keep others out. Caleb lay awake for hours listening to the sounds of the city, so different from the mountain, So much noise, so much humanity pressed together. Beside him, in the women's cell, Najoni was also awake. He could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. "You all right?" he called softly. "Cannot sleep. Keep thinking about tomorrow." "You're scared." "Yes, but also I think ready. To speak, to be heard, to make him answer for what he did." "You're very brave." "I am not brave. I am just tired of being afraid." Caleb thought about that. About the difference between courage and desperation. About how sometimes they looked the same from the outside but felt completely different on the inside. "Najoni," he said, "whatever happens tomorrow, whatever the outcome, you should know that you've already won." "How?" "You survived. You kept your spirit. You didn't let what he did define who you are. That's victory." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly he almost didn't hear, she said, "Thank you, Caleb Stone, for everything. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we finish this." Morning came with church bells ringing across Denver. The courthouse steps were already crowded by the time the 9 emerged from their cells. Word had spread overnight. People wanted to see this. The trial of an Army major accused of rape and murder. The scandal of the decade. Judge Holland had ordered the largest courtroom prepared. 200 seats, all filled. Standing room only in the back. Reporters from every newspaper in the territory. Sketch artists. Even a photographer with his bulky equipment. Caleb and his group sat on the left side. Elena clutched her rosary. Reverend Blackwood prayed quietly. Ridge stared straight ahead, his jaw set. Najoni sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, wearing a new dress that Elena had bought for her that morning. She looked small and fragile and absolutely unbreakable. The right side of the courtroom was empty until 9 o'clock. Then the doors opened and Major Bartholomew Creed walked in. He wore his full dress uniform, medals gleaming, brass polished to a mirror shine. His hair was perfect. His posture was military straight. He looked like the embodiment of order and discipline in American might. Behind him came his lawyer, a Denver attorney named Thornton Mills, who wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. Then came character witnesses, a parade of officers and civilians prepared to testify to Creed's exemplary service, his moral character, his dedication to duty. And finally at the back came General Philip Creed's representative, a colonel named Hastings, sent to observe and report back. The Army was watching. Creed sat down, arranged his uniform, looked across the aisle at Najoni. His face showed nothing. No anger, no fear, no guilt. Just cold calculation. Holland entered. Everyone stood. The judge took his seat, gavelled the room to order. "We're here to conduct a preliminary hearing into charges of rape, attempted murder, and conspiracy against Major Bartholomew Creed of Fort Garland. This is not a full trial. This is to determine if there's sufficient evidence to warrant a court-martial. Major Creed, you are represented by counsel?" "Yes, Your Honor." Mills stood. "And we're prepared to demonstrate that these charges are baseless, motivated by prejudice against the military and against my client specifically. We'll see. The prosecution will present its case first. Mr. Stone, you're acting as representative for the complainants?" Caleb stood. "Yes, sir." "Then call your first witness." Caleb looked at Najoni. She stood, walked to the witness chair. Every eye in the courtroom followed her. She sat, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. "Please state your name for the record," Holland said. "Najoni, of the Mescalero Apache." "And what is your relationship to Major Creed?" "I was translator for the Army. I worked for him." "Tell the court what happened on October 22nd of this year." Najoni took a breath. Then she began. She told it all. Every detail. The meeting, being ordered to stay, the locked door, what Creed did, what he said while he did it, the order to Ridge to kill her. Her voice never wavered. She looked directly at Creed while she spoke, forcing him to see her, to acknowledge her humanity. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. Several women were crying. One man got up and left, his face pale. Mills stood for cross-examination. "Miss Najoni, isn't it true that you were paid $15 a month to work for the Army?" "Yes." "And isn't it true that you had access to Major Creed's office, his files, his personal effects?" "I translated, sometimes in his office." So you had opportunity to observe his habits, his schedule, to know when he would be alone? Caleb saw where this was going. Objection. Counsel is implying the victim somehow planned her own assault. Sustained, Holland said sharply. Mr. Mills, tread carefully. Mills shifted tactics. Miss Najoni, you claim Major Creed raped you, but you have no witnesses to this alleged assault, correct? He locked the door. He made sure no one would see. So it's your word against his. And Major Creed is a decorated officer with 15 years of distinguished service. While you are, he paused, an Apache, a people known for hostility to the United States Army. The courtroom erupted. Holland gavelled for order. Mr. Mills, I warned you. Another comment like that and I'll hold you in contempt. But the damage was done. Mills had planted the seed. White officer versus Indian woman. Who would the jury believe? Caleb stood. Your Honor, I'd like to redirect. Go ahead. Najoni, you said you bit Major Creed during the assault. Where? His right hand, between thumb and first finger. And this was how many weeks ago? 5 weeks. Your Honor, I'd like to request that Major Creed show the court his right hand. The courtroom went quiet. Creed's face, for the first time, showed emotion. Just a flicker, quickly suppressed. Mills jumped up. Objection! This is a violation of my client's rights. You can't force him to submit to a physical examination without probable cause. The probable cause is the testimony we just heard, Holland said. Major Creed, please stand and show the court your right hand. Creed stood slowly. His left hand moved to cover his right. Your Honor, I must protest, Mills began. Major Creed, that was not a request. Show your hand or I'll hold you in contempt and issue a warrant for your arrest. The moment stretched. The entire courtroom held its breath. Then Creed, with deliberate slowness, raised his right hand. There between thumb and forefinger was a crescent-shaped scar, exactly where Najoni had said it would be. The courtroom exploded. Reporters scribbled furiously. The sketch artist's hand flew across his paper. People shouted questions. Holland gavelled for order. Let the record show that Major Creed bears a scar consistent with a human bite on his right hand, in the exact location the witness described. Mills tried to recover. Your Honor, a scar proves nothing. My client could have been bitten by anyone, anytime. Then let's test that theory. Holland gestured to Najoni. Miss Najoni, you made an impression of your teeth in wax last night. Bailiff, bring it forward. The bailiff placed the wax impression on the judge's bench. Holland examined it, then looked at Creed's hand. The size and shape appear consistent. I'm ordering a forensic examination. Major Creed, you will submit to having a dental wax impression made. If it matches the scar on your hand, that's physical evidence linking you directly to Miss Najoni's testimony. Your Honor, this is absurd. This is justice, Mr. Mills. Sit down. The hearing continued through the afternoon. Ridge testified about the order to kill Najoni. Webb and Coleman corroborated, describing the Army's pattern of covering up crimes. Elena told Rosa's story. Reverend Blackwood told Singing Birds. With each testimony, the weight of evidence grew heavier. The courtroom audience shifted from skeptical to convinced, to outraged. Then, at 4 o'clock, a young woman entered the courtroom. She was thin, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. She walked hesitantly, as if each step required conscious decision. Your Honor, Ridge stood. That's my sister, Sarah Ridge. Sarah made her way to the witness stand. She looked at her brother, drew strength from his presence, then turned to face the court. My name is Sarah Ridge. 18 months ago, Major Creed invited me to Fort Garland. He said he had a job opportunity for me. I was excited, hopeful. I thought he was being kind. Her voice broke. Ridge started to stand, but Caleb put a hand on his arm, held him back. Sarah needed to tell this herself. He wasn't kind. He was a monster. He locked me in a supply room and he did things, terrible things, things I can't speak about in front of all these people. When it was over, he told me if I ever told anyone, he would destroy my family. He would have my brother court-martialed. He would make sure my parents lost their farm. So I stayed silent. I tried to kill myself. My brother stopped me, and I've lived with the shame and the fear every day since. She looked directly at Creed now. But I'm not silent anymore. I'm not afraid anymore. You don't get to hurt people and hide behind your uniform. You don't get to destroy lives and face no consequences. I'm here. I'm speaking. And I'm not the only one. As if on cue, the courtroom doors opened again. A woman entered, then another, then 5 more. 8 women total, ranging in age from 16 to 40. Apache, Mexican, Kiowa, even 2 white women. They filed to the front of the courtroom, stood in a line facing Creed. One of them spoke. My name is Morning Sky. I am the daughter of William Greyhawk, scout for the Army. 5 years ago, Major Creed assaulted me at Fort Garland. I disappeared after. Everyone thought I ran away. I didn't. I was hiding from him. Hiding from the shame. But no more. Another. My name is Catherine Mills. I am the niece of Mr. Mills, the lawyer sitting right there. 2 years ago, an Army officer assaulted me at a military dinner in Denver. I told my uncle what happened. I described the man, but I didn't know his name. My uncle gave me money and told me to stay quiet, said speaking out would ruin both our lives. She turned to face Mills directly. It wasn't until yesterday, Uncle Thornton, when I saw the newspaper with Major Creed's photograph that I knew. The man who hurt me, the man you're defending. They're the same person. Mills had gone white as paper, his hands trembling. Catherine, I swear I didn't know. If I had known, it was him. But you knew it was someone, and you chose silence over justice. You chose your career over your own blood. One by one, the women spoke, each telling their story, each naming Creed. The pattern was undeniable, the evidence overwhelming. Holland looked shaken. How many victims are there? We found 14, Your Honor, Caleb said. These 8 were brave enough to come forward. There are likely more who are still too afraid. Creed had stood during the testimonies, his face a mask of rage barely contained. Now he exploded. Lies, all lies. These women are liars, coached by this mountain man and his band of deserters. I'm a decorated officer. I've served this country for 15 years. And you're going to believe them over me? Major Creed, sit down, Holland ordered. No, I will not sit down while my reputation is destroyed by savages and whores. The room erupted in chaos. Holland gabbled frantically, and then quietly from the back of the room a voice. I believe them. Everyone turned. Colonel Hastings, the general's representative, stood. I've been listening all day. I've watched the evidence mount. I've seen the scar on your hand, Creed. I've heard these women's stories, and I believe them. He walked forward. I'm here representing General Creed, your father, and I have a message from him. He pulled a telegram from his pocket, read aloud. If my son is guilty of these crimes, the Army will not protect him. Justice must be served. Let the law decide. The telegram was dated that morning. The general had heard about the trial, had investigated, had made his decision. Creed stared at the telegram like it was a death sentence. My father sent you to abandon me? Your father sent me to ensure justice. And justice, Major, is not on your side. Creed's face twisted. In that moment, the mask finally cracked completely. All the cold calculation, all the control, all the calculated charm evaporated. What remained was rage and hate and desperate animal fear. He lunged at Najoni. He moved fast, covering the distance in 3 steps, his hand reaching for her throat. But Caleb was faster. He threw himself between them, took Creed down hard. They crashed into the witness stand, rolling, struggling. Ridge and Webb jumped in, pulled Creed away. He fought like a wild thing, screaming obscenities, spitting, trying to claw at anyone within reach. Get him out of here, Holland shouted. Bailiffs, restrain him. 4 bailiffs wrestled Creed into submission, cuffed his hands, dragged him toward the door. He twisted his head back, looked at Najoni. You're nothing, he has screamed. You're dirt. You're less than dirt. You're... The door slammed shut behind him. His voice faded. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of women crying. Not sad crying, relieved crying. The crying of people who had carried terrible weight and could finally set it down. Holland gabbled weakly. Court is adjourned. I'll issue my ruling tomorrow morning. But I can tell you now, there will be a court-martial. There will be charges. And if the evidence holds, there will be consequences. He looked at Caleb, at Najoni, at the 8 women still standing in front of the bench. Thank you, he said simply. Thank you for your courage. That night, they gathered in a hotel dining room that Judge Holland had arranged. All of them together, victims and allies, survivors and supporters. Someone ordered champagne. Someone else proposed a toast. But before anyone could drink, Najoni stood. I want to say something. The room quieted. 5 weeks ago, I wanted to die. I did not think I could live with what happened to me. I thought the shame would kill me if the soldiers didn't. But then I found people who saw me not as a victim, not as an Indian, not as property. They saw me as human. They risked everything to help me. And in doing that, they taught me something. She looked around the room. They taught me that we are not defined by what is done to us. We are defined by what we do after. We can stay silent. We can hide. We can let the shame eat us alive. Or we can speak. We can stand. We can fight back. And when we do, when we refuse to be silenced, we become more powerful than those who tried to break us. She raised her glass. So this toast is not to victory. We have not won yet. Major Creed might escape justice. His father's influence might protect him. The military might close ranks. We don't know what tomorrow brings, but we know we stood up. We know we spoke. We know we refused to disappear. And that is enough. To courage, Ridge said. To justice, Elena added. To speaking truth, Reverend Blackwood said. They drank together, these unlikely family, bound by pain and hope, in equal measure. Later, on the hotel balcony, Caleb stood alone looking at the mountains. Even from Denver, 60 miles away, he could see them, dark shapes against the starlit sky. Najoni found him there. You are thinking of Laughing Water, she said. How did you know? Because when you look at mountains, your face changes. You look happy and sad at the same time. Caleb smiled slightly. She loved the mountains, used to say they were the earth's way of reaching toward heaven. She was wise. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Najoni said, What happens now, after the trial, after Creed is sentenced? What do we do? I don't know. I suppose we go back to our lives, you to your people, me to my cabin. Is that what you want? Caleb thought about the cabin, about the quiet, about the long winters alone with only memories for company. I don't know what I want, he admitted. For 4 years, I've just been surviving, just been existing. This, helping you, standing up to Creed, it's the first time I've felt truly alive since Laughing Water died. I don't know if I can go back to just existing. Nizoni was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, The Apache have a saying, the best way to honor the dead is to live fully, to love fully, to fight fully. Your Laughing Water, she would not want you to stop living. How do you know? Because if she loved you, she wanted your happiness. That is what love means. Caleb looked at Najoni, really looked at her. This woman who had been broken and had rebuilt herself. This woman who had found courage in the darkest moment. This woman who was teaching him that maybe, just maybe, second chances were real. What about you? He asked. What do you want? I want to matter. I want my life to mean something. I thought being a translator would do that. Thought helping my people negotiate with the army would make a difference. But now I know there are other ways to help, other way to fight. She smiled slightly. Maybe I become like you, someone who stands up when others cannot, someone who sees injustice and refuses to look away. That's a hard life. Yes, but an honest one. Jesse appeared in the doorway. Uncle Caleb, Judge Holland wants to see us, all of us. They went back inside, gathered in Holland's suite. The judge looked tired but satisfied. I wanted to tell you before you heard it from anyone else. I'm issuing a warrant for Creed's immediate arrest. He'll be held in the Denver Federal Jail until the court-martial. His father has agreed to testify against him. Mills has withdrawn as his attorney. The Army is cooperating fully. He paused. You did it. You actually did it. What's the likely sentence? Ridge asked. For crimes of this magnitude, military execution, death by firing squad. The room went silent. Somehow hearing it said out loud made it real, made it final. Good, Elena said firmly. He deserves to die, for Rosa, for all the daughters. Not everyone agreed. Some felt conflicted about capital punishment, but no one argued. The weight of what Creed had done was too heavy for mercy. There's more, Holland said. The territorial governor wants to meet with you. He's proposing new laws to protect women, both settlers and native peoples, from military abuse. He wants you to help write them, to make sure this never happens again. Will the laws actually be enforced? Caleb asked skeptically. I don't know, but they're better than no laws at all. And with the publicity this trial has generated, there will be pressure to enforce them. You've done more than save yourselves. You've started a movement. After Holland left, they sat together processing everything. A movement, Jesse said wonderingly. We started a movement. We told the truth, Caleb corrected. What people do with it is up to them. The court-martial took place 3 weeks later. It lasted 4 days. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The sentence was death. Creed was executed by firing squad on December 10, 1878, at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. His last words were not an apology. They were a curse against the women who had testified against him. No one mourned him. Spring came to the San Juan Mountains, as it always did, with wild flowers and snow melt and the return of the elk herds. Caleb stood on his porch, watching the sun rise over the peaks, coffee warm in his hands. Behind him, the cabin was different than it had been 6 months ago. Bigger, with a new room added on, more furniture, more life. Najoni emerged, wrapped in a shawl, her own coffee steaming. Good morning. Morning. They stood together in comfortable silence. This had become their routine. Mornings on the porch, watching the mountain wake up. After the trial, Najoni had returned to her people. Caleb had returned to his cabin. But after 2 weeks of separation, she had ridden back up the mountain. I tried to leave, she had told him. Tried to go back to who I was before. But that person is gone. The mountain changed me. You changed me. And I think, maybe, I have changed you too. She had moved into the cabin in January. They were taking it slow, rebuilding themselves individually before trying to build something together. But the feelings were there, growing, like the limber pine on Laughing Water's grave, slowly but steadily reaching toward the sky. Jesse had gone to Denver, was working with Judge Holland and the governor on the new protection laws. He visited once a month, full of stories about politics and progress and the slow machinery of change. Ridge, Webb, and Coleman had been pardoned for desertion, reinstated in the Army with honor. Ridge had been promoted to sergeant. They were stationed at Fort Lyon now, far from Fort Garland, working under officers who valued integrity over rank. Elena had returned to Salida, but she came to visit sometimes, bringing news and stories and a mother's fierce pride in what her daughter's death had accomplished. The 8 women who had testified were scattered across the territory, rebuilding their lives. Some had married, some had started businesses, some had become advocates, helping other women find their voices. Morning Sky Greyhawk's daughter had opened a school on the reservation, teaching Apache children to read and write in both English and their native tongue. What are you thinking about? Najoni asked. About how much has changed, about how one choice, one moment of deciding to do right instead of easy, created ripples that are still spreading. Do you regret it? No, not for a second, you. No, I am for the first time in my life exactly where I want to be. They heard hoofbeats. A rider approached, moving slowly up the mountain trail. As he got closer, they recognized Greyhawk. The scout dismounted, tied his horse, climbed the porch steps. He looked older than 6 months ago, but also somehow lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. Caleb Stone, Najoni, I come with news. Good news or bad? Caleb asked. Both. The good, Fort Garland has been shut down. The military is investigating all personnel who served under Creed. 12 officers have been court-martialed. Changes are happening. And the bad? Greyhawk was quiet for a moment. The bad is that evil does not die just because one man dies. There will be others like Creed. There will always be men who think power gives them the right to hurt people who cannot fight back. The laws you helped create, they are good. But laws only work if people enforce them, if people care enough to stand up. Then we make sure people care, Najoni said firmly. We tell our stories, over and over, until people cannot ignore them anymore. Greyhawk smiled. You have become a warrior in truth, not just name. I learned from the best. She looked at Caleb. Greyhawk stayed for lunch, told him about Morning Sky's school, about the changes in the territory, about the slow, grinding progress towards something that might, someday, approach justice. After he left, Caleb and Najoni walked up to Laughing Water's grave. The limber pine was budding, tiny green shoots emerging from winter's death. Caleb placed a new eagle feather at the base of the stone, stood in silence for a moment. "I have something to tell you," Najoni said, "something I have been afraid to say." Caleb turned to her. "I love you, Caleb Stone. I love your quiet strength. I love your stubborn honor. I love the way you see people, really see them, not what they look like or where they come from, but who they are inside. And I know it is soon. I know we have both been broken. I know we are still healing. But I needed you to know." Caleb took her hands in his. They were warm despite the cool spring air. "I love you too," he said. "And I think maybe Laughing Water would be happy about that. She never wanted me to stop living. She wanted me to find joy again. You are my joy, Najoni." They stood there on the mountainside, two survivors who had found each other in the darkest moment and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. "Will you marry me?" Caleb asked. "Not right away, when you're ready, but someday. Will you build a life with me here, on this mountain, in this place that has given us both so much?" Najoni smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes." They were married in June in a ceremony that blended Apache and Ute traditions, conducted by Reverend Blackwood with Greyhawk as witness. Jesse gave Najoni away. Elena made the wedding dress. Ridge and his men provided honor guard. Judge Holland came, and the governor, and 8 women who had testified against Creed, and dozens of others whose lives had been touched by the story. They stood on the ridge where Laughing Water was buried, and as Caleb and Najoni exchanged vows, a breeze moved through the limber pine, making it whisper. Some there swore they heard laughter in that wind, gentle, approving laughter. That night, as Caleb and Najoni lay together in the cabin that was now truly theirs, she said, "Tell me about the future. What do you see?" "I see children," Caleb said, "running through these meadows, learning to track and hunt and fish, learning about honor and courage and standing up for what's right. I see you teaching them Apache ways, me teaching them mountain ways. I see them growing strong and brave and kind." "I see that too," Najoni said softly. "And I see something else. I see other women, other victims, finding their way to this cabin, finding safety, finding healing, like I did. You want to make this a sanctuary? I want to make this a place where no one is turned away, where everyone is seen, where everyone matters. Is that too much?" Caleb pulled her close. "No, it's exactly enough." The first winter was hard, learning to trust, learning to heal together. But spring came, as it always did, with new life and new hope. By the second year, word had spread across the reservations and settlements. A woman arrived one night, fleeing her husband's fists. Najoni took her in without question. Then came another, then 3 more. "We need more space," Najoni told Caleb. He looked at the mountain, at the land that had saved them both. "Then we'll build it." 5 years after their wedding, the cabin had become 3 cabins, a small compound in the mountains where women fleeing violence could find refuge. Najoni ran it with fierce compassion, teaching the women skills, helping them heal, preparing them to face the world again. Caleb taught them practical survival, how to shoot, how to track, how to live off the land if necessary, how to defend themselves, how to never be helpless again. Jesse, now 21 and studying law in Denver, visited when he could, helping women understand their legal rights, filing charges against abusers when the women were ready. 2 children ran through the meadows, a son named Thomas after Caleb's brother, a daughter named Laughing Water after the woman who had started it all. The mountain had given them everything: shelter, purpose, love, second chances, and in return, they gave the mountain the one thing it had always needed: voices. Voices for the voiceless. Light in the darkness. Justice in a land that had too long gone without it. On quiet evenings, Caleb would sometimes walk up to the graves, 2 now, side by side. Laughing Water's original stone, and beside it, a new one for her memory, so that Najoni would never feel like she was replacing anyone. So that both women, both loves, could exist in the same space. He would stand there between past and present and feel grateful. Grateful for loss that had taught him compassion. Grateful for pain that had taught him strength. Grateful for a mountain that had given him everything he needed exactly when he needed it. Thank you, he would whisper to the wind, to laughing water, to the mountain, to the universe that had somehow led him to this moment. The wind would answer with the rustle of pine branches, the distant call of an eagle, the sound of children laughing in the meadow below. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. Years later, when Caleb Stone died at the age of 76, surrounded by children and grandchildren and dozens of women whose lives he had helped save, his last words were simple. I kept my promise, laughing water. I lived, I loved, I fought for what mattered, and it was worth it. God, it was worth it. He was buried on the ridge between the two women he had loved, under the limber pine that was now 30 feet tall. And if you visit that place today, if you stand very still and listen very carefully, you can still hear the mountains singing. Singing songs of courage, songs of healing, songs of standing up when it would be easier to sit down, songs of choosing right over easy, justice over silence, love over fear. The mountain remembers, it always remembers, and it whispers its stories to anyone brave enough to listen.